All right.
Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for being here in our house.
Thanks for joining us now, or perhaps later, if it's not now.
Or perhaps before now. I mean, who's to say, really?
Certainly not us. So let's make sure we're live. And while we do, I'm Graham.
I'm Ashkahn.
And we're going to be, sharing some general float advice with you.
Today's day number 8.
It's true.
So that's 8 days that we've been doing this now.
It's been fun.
It feels like my entire life now.
I've enjoyed it. We actually have we should tell stories about our robes in general. I think there's like a good story behind like every robe I have.
Each day, just kind of, well, that's how we start.
Yeah.
It is the Bathrobe Chronicles.
And eventually maybe get some robe sponsorships, you know? So today, what are we going to be talking about in general? And then we have a robe story.
What are we doing? We're talking about tanks today. Float tanks. So,
hope you're ready.
yeah,
You know?
this is going to be a big one.
But no, whether to drain them while you're shut down, whether to dilute them, whether to turn down the temperature on the tanks,
Turn them into decorative fountains.
burn down the entire center.
There's a lot of options that you have.
But these robes that we're wearing,
Yeah, back to the important thing.
so these were shop robes that we had.
Maybe you can see that a little bit right there. Pretty nice. Pretty nice.
And it turns out that after a certain amount of time in circulation, pretty much all of your towels and robes will eventually get damaged to the point where it doesn't feel right to offer them to customers anymore.
Yeah, you can get kind of weird. Usually it's like a small tear, or they're just not like very soft anymore, or they have some weird stain on them.
Yeah. So our shop managers had the great idea of taking those and doing a big tie-dye party with the whole shop staff. So these are hand tie-dyed float-on robes.
Which is a great way to cover up any weird stains that your robes might have.
They don't make them softer, but they look really cool.
Yeah.
And it was a nice little bonding thing. So float-on tie-dye robes. You heard it
Boom.
here first.
Robe fact of the day.
They only work right if they are float-on robes. So if you do want to do this, let us know and we'll ship
Sell
this
them
over.
to you,
Yeah,
yeah.
sell them for
A high markup. Okay, so today we're going to talk about float tanks, like I said.
only day 8. It's really just going off the rails already, huh?
There's, so I think a couple people are closed down at this point, and there's this question. We talked about it a little bit when someone commented on one of our previous episodes that what do you do with your float tanks? Do you turn the temperature down? Should you just kind of leave things how they are? Should you totally drain them? Is there like a good strategy for being closed for an indefinite period of time?
And it really depends on a lot of different factors, you know. One of the biggest ones, obviously, is just cost, right? Like if you are deciding to just drain your tanks and you don't want to maintain them at all, then there's a certain cost associated not just with the salt and the water going into them, but also just the time that it takes to fill up tanks and reheat them and everything like that.
Time is money, is what that's people keep saying that. I don't get it, but that's probably the most expensive thing you could do, really,
Yeah.
right? I mean, almost no amount of maintenance and stuff like that will likely equal the cost of actually just draining the tanks and having to refill all of them. I guess depending. Maybe if you have one float tank.
Yeah, there's
and it's a
also
small one.
There's also accessibility too, right? Like I just got a question in from someone who said that they were like a 45-minute drive from their center,
Yeah.
and they were thinking of draining everything because they just didn't want to have to go in like every day, and they were wondering about diluting. So that brings us to the next option, other than just totally draining, which we'll call kind of a last resort. Although if you do just want to like shut things down, or you're just planning on being shut down for like 6 months, like that's an option. You kind of just don't have to worry about it anymore.
It does definitely simplify things.
But yeah, cost is the main con to that one.
So why do people have to go to their float centers? I guess because not everyone, I guess maybe not everyone would actually need to. There's a possibility that your float tanks can run themselves entirely.
So that's one of the next factors to take into account is just your equipment and what it can actually handle.
And there's kind of two sides of that. So like one issue is that your float tanks need to be kept up at temperature, otherwise you're going to start get salt to crystallize in there. And usually your float tank, for most float tanks, any float tank that has like under tank heaters or some sort of heating system that can keep the tub warm, is going to be able to keep that water warm enough that it's going to be cool. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I got it.
Nice. And so in that
I'm
scenario,
sure the audience at home is just like laughing out loud wildly right now. Hysterics.
In that scenario, things are fine for your float tank, but what happens is the water in the rest of the filtration system, the pump, the pipes, the filters, stuff like that, usually won't be able to get the heat very well. It will start cooling down, and you can just get salt starting to crystallize, like around your pump impeller and stuff like that.
Literally just becoming a solid block.
Yeah, so that's not fun.
Chip into with a chisel and
it's
slowly pour hot water down.
You still can deal with it. Like, if you wanted to put in the time afterwards and just let that happen, I guess it would be okay. I don't know, it might be weird on like a UV system or something. Anyway, that's kind of uncharted territory, just letting that happen for like weeks at a time.
Yeah, probably not the best idea. Don't do that. That's not advice that we're giving.
And the other reason is you probably want to continue your treatment system somehow. It might not be a great idea just sanitation-wise to let your float tank kind of sit still for weeks at a time without ever having any of whatever you're doing, UV or peroxide or chlorine or bromine or ozone or any of the stuff that you're using, not having any of that kind of affected for a very long time. Like, also is kind of uncharted territory, like whether your float tank will be perfect at the end of that whole process is, I don't know, a little questionable.
And even we've had mixed results. Like we've,
Yeah.
And so this gets a little bit into that diluting option too. Like once you're deciding that you don't fully want to drain the tanks, but you also don't want to deal with this salt crystallization that's going to happen inside your pump system unless the whole thing is running on a regular basis. What if you dilute the water down to the point where it's not going to crystallize, right? We've done this before, and we've even just like diluted water down and let it sit in our lobby, like in a like basically empty float tank.
So no filtration,
no filtration,
it wasn't hitting any UV or anything like that. We were dosing it with peroxide, so that was like the only thing happening, and it didn't really work.
No, it ended up really funky.
Yeah.
It turns out, even though we know that the Epsom salt by itself isn't enough to disinfect the water, diluting that down and taking away even more of that Epsom salt really does seem to have an effect on its like longevity or like its ability to just get a little funkier for sure.
So if you have a float tank that has an automated system in its controller to run the filtration system, that solves the heat problem. And if that filtration system has some sort of auto doser, then that is a scenario where maybe you could be okay. I mean, the UV is like the main thing, not really the peroxide. So like it could be that just running with UV, or especially if you have, an ozone system and that's your main form of sanitation, like that doesn't require anything other than the filtration system running. So if you have a system that works like that, it just runs by itself every 12 hours or something, and the filtration system is intact and working, then I don't know, I guess your float tank's kind of like maybe could just be on autopilot.
Yeah, it always still makes me nervous. Like we're always nervous about pumps running when we're not in the building. We've just heard so many horror stories.
You should go back to our episode yesterday and look at the security camera idea, because like I'd almost want to just put a camera into each room and just look at be able to look at the float tanks.
They're only $20 a piece for the security cameras, so yeah, mounting like a camera up above your pump system and just like run the pumps, keep an eye on it.
That'd be, I mean,
that does actually sound like a good idea. I hadn't thought about the security cameras on your pumps.
I feel like you could do it, like
make sure those things don't get out of hand.
Yeah, put one on the desk and
and as we talked about yesterday too, there's a two-way intercom, so you can actually talk to the pumps,
and they can talk back. Usually, at least at this point, most things are talking.
But you can listen to it, see if there's a whine. You're like, oh, that impeller sounds like it's getting a little too much hair in there. I recognize that.
Well, okay. I mean, it's probably going to be okay.
What is that, cavitation?
There's probably not going to be a lot of hair getting into your float tanks at this point. Hopefully.
I just wanted to make the cavitation.
So I'm going to go. We're going to put it in the probable list. This one's going straight probable. So we're gonna say that running, if you're set up well, you can run your float tanks from the comfort of your home. Probably.
Yep. And if you're not set up well, then
you're gonna have to go out there.
So we're doing none of what we mentioned. I should say at Float On,
like most of our advice.
Yeah. Do as we say, not as we do. You know. So we're in kind of a unique position though, which is we're really close to our float center, and we have 6 float tanks. Pretty much 3 of which are double-sized float tanks. So there's a lot of salt and water in there. Our pumps do not run automatically.
No. Which is not really a big deal until this, you know? Like, previous to this, it was like, once on Thanksgiving and once on Christmas, someone would have to walk 5 minutes down the street and go around the pumps.
Yeah, normally we're open 24 hours a day, so, like, what to do when we're closed is not something we prepared for quite as much as maybe other people who, you know, close at night and have a little more experience with this kind of thing. So we're actually maintaining the tanks. We go down twice a day to run the pumps, basically. Empty the dehumidifiers in the building, which still, there's a lot of humidity. Check for mail. You know, we're still getting mail for all of our different divisions of Float On and the Float Helm and stuff down there. So, and there's plants to take care of. Basically, we just have a few errands that we take care of in the shop, and running the pumps doesn't take us too much time. You know, we're only about 5 minutes from Float On, where we're quarantined over here in our living room. So. So that's what we're doing. We didn't dilute them. We didn't actually even turn down the temperatures really in there. No. We're not draining them, obviously. We're just taking care of them, only no one's floating.
And we did mention draining the temperatures before, which was kind of like, there's probably some amount you can lower the temperature and you won't cross that saturation point and won't have any difficulty. But my suspicion is it probably won't actually save you that much money. Again, from like reading the kind of stuff that the manufacturers put out, it seems like float tanks are, when they're not like running the pump and stuff like that, like they seem to be relatively efficient as far as we hear from manufacturers. I guess we'll find out when our utility bill comes. But yeah, I mean, it might be that like the range of temperature you can drop is just going to not be a huge benefit in terms of your energy bill. And it's hard to know exactly what that temperature is. Like, what is that point where things will start to get a little weird?
So, those are your options. Good luck. You know, obviously every case is going to be a little bit different. So, I was just trying to think. I'm like, could we actually give people advice here? Like, could we do that? Like, is this within our capability?
No. We do. I guess the one benefit of having your float tanks at temperature and filled with salt water is whoever is going in to do the kind of maintenance can still hop into float, at least while they're closed. We actually have one of our shop managers right now doing a float in our facility, trying to break a world record for length of float.
Yeah. So check it out. This is being recorded on April 1st, so if you're tuning in then, you should be live. Should we see what people are saying over here? Someone says that they're loving the robes. Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good.
Thanks, Tammy.
Mostly robe-related comments is what we're looking for. So
we say another day, another bathrobe. I didn't type that though, so Float Tank Solutions is just kind of talking on its own here. Well, this is fun. I like talking about what to do with your float tanks. If you are in the shop too, just kind of hang out with them. You know, like they appreciate the company. One of our Float On owners, little known fact, used to just sleep next to his float tank in a sleeping bag. That's what he was doing when we met him.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good for your health. Float tanks like it.
All right.
You got anything else?
No.
It's just the way you said "all right." I thought maybe you were gonna,
that was my deep contemplative all right of conclusion.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, guys. Have a nice, safe, isolated time out there, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
That's right.
Day number 9.
It's gonna be a big one. It's gonna be a big one. Turn off this live stream.